Welcome. In this video, we're taking a calm journey into the life of one of the most recognizable figures in modern American history, Donald Trump. From the streets of Queens to the towers of Manhattan, from television screens to the White House, this story spans decades of transformation, ambition, and controversy. We'll walk through the quiet moments and the loud ones, the victories and the setbacks, the man behind the persona. So settle in, relax, close your eyes if you wish, and let's drift into the story. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments where you're watching from. Let's begin. The year is 1946, June 14th, to be exact. In the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens, New York, a child is born into a family that already knows something about success, about building, about the peculiar art of turning empty lots into something people want to see. The child's name is Donald John Trump, the fourth of 5 children, arriving into a household where the sound of construction and the smell of fresh lumber are as familiar as Sunday dinners. His father, Fred Trump, is already making a name for himself in the outer boroughs of New York City. Not in Manhattan, mind you, not yet in that glittering island where the real action seems to happen, but in Queens and Brooklyn, where working families need places to live, where the post-war boom is creating demand for housing that seems endless. Fred is a builder, but not the kind who dreams in marble and gold. He builds practical, efficient, profitable apartment complexes. Row after row of brick buildings that look almost identical, each one a small money-making machine. The Trump household is comfortable, more than comfortable really, though Fred never lets his children forget the value of a dollar. The house on Midland Parkway is large and imposing, with white columns that give it an air of importance in the neighborhood. Young Donald grows up with his siblings, Marianne, the eldest, sharp and quick-minded, Fred Jr., the oldest son, quiet and somewhat gentle, Elizabeth, steady and private, and Robert, the youngest, who will always remain somewhat in the shadow of his more famous brother. From the earliest days, Donald shows a particular kind of energy. Not the scholarly kind that makes teachers smile and parents beam at parent-teacher conferences. No, this is a different sort of drive. Competitive, restless, always measuring himself against others, always needing to come out on top in whatever small battles the childhood world offers. In the playground, in the classroom, even at the dinner table, there's this constant need to be noticed, to be the best, to win. His mother, Marianne MacLeod Trump, came to America from Scotland, from the wind-swept Isle of Lewis, bringing with her an accent that never quite fades, and a certain old-world sense of propriety mixed with ambition. She's elegant in a way that stands out in Queens, always impeccably dressed, always aware of appearances. From her, perhaps, comes some of Donald's later obsession with presentation, with looking successful even before you are. The family attends the First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica regularly. Sunday mornings in pressed clothes, sitting in pews, listening to sermons about morality and virtue and the Protestant work ethic. The minister, Norman Vincent Peale, is famous for his philosophy of positive thinking, for his belief that you can achieve almost anything if you visualize it clearly enough, if you believe in yourself strongly enough. Years later, Donald will often mention Peale's influence, though whether he absorbed the spiritual lessons or just the self-confidence techniques is open to interpretation. School for young Donald is complicated. He's not particularly interested in sitting still, in following rules that don't make immediate sense to him, in accepting the authority of teachers just because they're teachers. At Kew Forest School, a private institution not far from home, he develops a reputation. Energetic, yes. Problematic, also yes. There are incidents, small rebellions, the kind of behavior that makes administrators exchange concerned looks and call parents in for conversations. Fred Trump, watching his second son with a mixture of concern and recognition, because Fred himself was never one to simply follow orders without question, makes a decision. The boy needs discipline, structure, the kind of environment that doesn't negotiate, that doesn't bend to a 13-year-old's moods and preferences. And so, in 1959, Donald is sent away to the New York Military Academy. The academy is in Cornwall-on-Hudson, about 60 miles north of New York City, far enough to feel like exile for a teenager used to the familiar streets of Queens. It's a place of uniforms and formations, of strict schedules and stricter consequences, of upperclassmen who enforce rules with the zealousness of true believers. The buildings are imposing in that particular military way, all stone and severity, designed to remind you at every moment that you're part of something larger than yourself, that individual desires matter less than collective discipline. Those first weeks are hard. The homesickness comes in waves, especially at night when the barracks are dark and quiet, except for the breathing of dozens of other boys, each dealing with their own adjustment, their own small heartbreaks at being away from home. The routine is relentless. Wake-up calls before dawn, inspections where every button and crease is scrutinized, marching drills that seem designed more to break your spirit than teach you anything useful, classes that feel secondary to the military training. But something happens over those months and years at the academy. Donald doesn't break. Instead, he finds a way to thrive in this environment. He discovers that he's good at the social dynamics of military school, at reading the hierarchies, at figuring out how to gain status within this rigid system. He becomes an athlete, particularly in baseball, where his height and natural aggression serve him well. He moves up through the ranks, eventually becoming a captain, wearing the uniform with pride, learning to project authority even when he might not entirely feel it. The military academy teaches him certain things that will stay with him forever. The importance of appearance, of looking sharp and put together. The value of dominance in social situations, of never showing weakness, of attacking before you're attacked. The effectiveness of simple, direct communication, of orders rather than requests. And perhaps most importantly, the lesson that rules are not necessarily about morality, but about power. Those who make the rules have the power, and if you want power, you need to position yourself as a rule maker, not a rule follower. During vacations, he returns to Queens, to the familiar world of his father's business. Fred Trump by now has built thousands of apartments, has become genuinely wealthy, though he still drives himself to construction sites in practical cars, still negotiates every contract with the intensity of someone for whom every dollar matters. Donald starts accompanying his father on these trips, watching how Fred deals with contractors, with city officials, with tenants. There's a particular style to it, aggressive but not angry, demanding but oddly charismatic, always looking for the advantage in every situation. Fred has strong opinions about almost everything, and he shares them freely, especially about the weakness he sees in his oldest son, Fred Jr. Freddie, as the family calls him, is different from his father and younger brother. He's more interested in people than profits, more inclined to be liked than feared. He becomes a pilot for TWA, a career choice that baffles and disappoints Fred Sr. "You're a glorified bus driver," Fred tells his oldest son, words that cut deep because they're meant to. Donald watches this dynamic, absorbs it. He sees what happens when you don't meet his father's expectations, when you choose your own path instead of the one laid out for you. The lesson is clear. To win his father's approval, to secure his place in the family business, he needs to be tough, aggressive, successful in the specific ways that Fred values. Empathy is weakness. Hesitation is failure. Winning is everything. After graduating from the military academy in 1964, Donald heads to Fordham University in the Bronx. It's a good school, a Jesuit institution known for rigorous academics, but it's not where Donald really wants to be. He spends 2 years there, commuting from home, not particularly distinguished academically, but social enough, confident enough, already developing the persona of someone who's going somewhere, even if the exact destination isn't yet clear. In 1966, he transfers to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. This is what he's been waiting for. Wharton is prestigious in a way that matters in business circles, known for its finance program, for producing executives and entrepreneurs. It's in Philadelphia, far enough from home to feel independent, but close enough to maintain connections to New York and his father's business. College in the late 1960s is a strange time. The country is being torn apart by the Vietnam War, by civil rights struggles, by a generation questioning everything their parents believed in. On campuses across America, students are protesting, occupying buildings, demanding change in voices that grow louder and angrier each month. But this wave of activism doesn't really touch Donald. He's not interested in politics in that idealistic, world-changing sense. He's interested in business, in deals, in the practical matter of making money. There's the matter of the draft, of course. The war is consuming young men by the thousands, feeding them into jungles half a world away, and every male college student lives with the awareness that their student deferment is a precious temporary thing. Donald received several deferments during his time in college, first for being a student, then later for medical reasons related to bone spurs in his heels. He doesn't serve in Vietnam, a fact that will come up again and again in his later life, though at the time it's just one of many futures avoided. At Wharton, he's not the type to spend long hours in the library, not the kind of student who obsesses over every detail of financial theory or economic philosophy. He's more interested in the practical application, in the deals and personalities rather than the academic frameworks. He does well enough to graduate, earning his degree in economics in 1968, but he's not top of his class, not especially memorable to most of his professors. What he has is confidence, a growing sense of his own destiny, and a clear path forward into his father's business. After graduation, he returns to New York, to Queens, to Fred Trump's empire of apartment buildings. Trump Management, as the company is called, operates primarily in Brooklyn and Queens, managing thousands of residential units in middle-class and working-class neighborhoods. It's profitable, very profitable, but it's not glamorous. The work involves collecting rent, managing maintenance, dealing with tenant complaints, navigating the complex relationships with city officials and regulators that make New York real estate as much about politics as construction. Donald starts learning the business from the ground up, though ground up for the boss's son is different than it would be for anyone else. He's given real responsibilities quickly, trusted with projects and decisions that would take others years to reach. He accompanies his father to buildings, watches how Fred handles problems, how he negotiates with contractors who always want more money, how he deals with city inspectors who might find violations that need to be addressed. There's a particular incident that stays with him that seems to crystallize something about how business actually works in New York City. Fred Trump has been accused of racial discrimination in his rental policies, of refusing to rent to black applicants. The charges come from civil rights organizations, from tenants who were turned away despite having solid incomes and references. The accusations are serious, potentially damaging not just to the company's reputation, but to its ability to do business with the city. Fred's response is not to apologize or quietly change policies. Instead, he fights. He hires lawyers, aggressive ones, and pushes back hard against the accusations. Donald is involved in this fight, learning from his father's combative approach, watching how aggression and denial can sometimes work better than accommodation. Eventually, the case is settled without any admission of wrongdoing, a pattern that will repeat itself in Donald's own business career. Fight, never admit fault, claim victory regardless of the actual outcome. But even as he learns the family business, Donald is looking beyond Queens and Brooklyn. His eyes keep drifting across the East River to Manhattan, to that island of glass and steel where the real players operate, where the glamorous buildings rise into the sky, where names become brands and brands become legends. Queens is fine for his father's generation, profitable and solid, but Donald wants more. He wants the spotlight, the prestige, the kind of success that comes not just with money, but with fame. Manhattan in the early 1970s is a paradox. In some ways, the city is at its lowest point in decades. Crime is rising, the middle class is fleeing to the suburbs, entire neighborhoods feel dangerous and abandoned. The city government is lurching toward bankruptcy, unable to maintain basic services, unable to pay its bills. There's garbage on the streets, graffiti covering subway cars, a sense that the city's best days are behind it. But Donald looks at the same situation and sees opportunity. Where others see decay, he sees cheap real estate. Where others see problems, he sees the potential for someone bold enough, connected enough, lucky enough to make a fortune. Manhattan is wounded, which means it's vulnerable, which means deals are possible that wouldn't be in better times. He starts making trips into Manhattan, not just as a visitor but as a would-be player. He buys lunch for journalists, cultivates relationships with city officials, makes himself known in the circles where real estate deals happen. He's young, tall, confident to the point of arrogance, always immaculately dressed in expensive suits, even though his actual accomplishments are still limited to working in his father's outer borough business. There's a property that catches his attention, the Commodore Hotel, right next to Grand Central Terminal. The hotel is dying, literally bleeding money, its old grandeur faded into shabbiness, its occupancy rates embarrassing. The owners want out. The city wants the property tax revenue. And here in this mess of competing interests and desperation, Donald sees his opening, his chance to prove he can operate at a different level than his father. The deal he envisions is complex, audacious, probably impossible for someone his age with his limited track record. He needs to convince the city to give him a massive tax abatement, needs to find a major hotel chain to partner with, needs to arrange financing that banks would normally never give to someone so unproven. But he has something valuable, the confidence to act like he's already successful, the Trump name that carries weight even if most of that weight comes from his father's accomplishments, and a New York City government desperate enough to take risks on anyone who might help revive the dying city. The nights are long during this period. He works from his apartment, making calls, arranging meetings, pushing forward the Commodore deal piece by piece. His father is skeptical. Fred has never operated in Manhattan, never sought this kind of attention, never believed in the value of projects that are more about image than about efficient profitability. But Donald keeps pushing, driven by something beyond just money, driven by a need to prove himself, to step out of his father's considerable shadow. Sleep becomes secondary to the deal. He lies awake thinking through angles, through strategies, through what he'll say to the next banker or city official. The apartment is quiet in those late hours, just the distant sounds of the city that never fully sleeps, the occasional siren, the hum of traffic even at 3 in the morning. In those quiet moments, does he doubt? Does he wonder if he's reaching too far, too fast? The months turn into a year, then more than a year, as the Commodore Hotel deal slowly takes shape. It's 1974, then 1975, and the city is falling deeper into crisis. The fiscal situation is so dire that President Ford essentially tells New York to drop dead, refuses federal assistance, leaves the city to figure out its own salvation. Newspapers run headlines about the city's impending bankruptcy, about services being cut, about whether New York, as anyone knows it, can survive. But Donald keeps working the deal. He brings in the Hyatt Corporation, a major hotel chain that sees potential in a renovated property next to Grand Central. He convinces them that he can deliver the tax abatement from the city, that he can make the numbers work in a way that turns a decaying relic into a profitable modern hotel. The Hyatt executives are cautious. This is a huge investment in a city that seems to be circling the drain. But there's something about Donald's certainty, his refusal to acknowledge the possibility of failure, that's persuasive. The city negotiations are delicate, complicated by politics and personalities, and the simple fact that New York is so broke, it's considering selling off assets just to make payroll. Donald meets with officials, with members of the Board of Estimate, making his case that this project will revitalize an entire area, will bring jobs and tax revenue eventually, will show that Manhattan can still attract major investment. He's learning to speak the language of public benefit while pursuing private profit, learning how to make what's good for him sound like what's good for everyone. His father helps, of course. Fred might not understand the appeal of Manhattan prestige projects, but he understands deals, understands leverage, And he's willing to put Trump Organization resources behind his son's ambition. Fred's connections with banks, built over decades of reliable if unspectacular projects, open doors that would otherwise remain closed to someone Donald's age. The father's conservatism balances the son's boldness, creates a combination that somehow makes the impossible deal possible. By 1976, the pieces are finally in place. The city agrees to a 40-year tax abatement, an extraordinary concession that will save millions over the life of the project. Hyatt commits to managing the renovated hotel. Financing is arranged through a complex structure involving multiple banks and investors. And Donald, at 30 years old, has his first major Manhattan project. The Commodore will be gutted and rebuilt, transformed from a fading relic into the Grand Hyatt, a gleaming modern hotel with a glass facade that reflects the city around it. Construction is its own kind of education. The crews work through 1977 and into 1978, tearing down old walls, installing new systems, creating something contemporary from the bones of the past. Donald is on site regularly, walking through the construction, talking to workers, checking progress, always thinking about timeline and budget because delays cost money and money is always the bottom line. He's learning the physical reality of construction, the thousand small decisions that turn architectural drawings into actual buildings where people will sleep and eat and do business. The Grand Hyatt opens in 1980 and it's successful. Not just successful, it's seen as a symbol of Manhattan's potential revival, proof that major investment can still work in the city. The press coverage is extensive, and suddenly Donald is not just Fred Trump's son, working on his father's outer borough projects. He's a Manhattan developer, a young man who pulled off a deal that more experienced players said couldn't be done. His name is in the papers, his photo in magazines, and he discovers something important about himself. He loves this attention, craves it, needs it in a way that's almost physical. But even as the Grand Hyatt is opening, he's already working on something bigger, something that will truly put his stamp on the city. He's been acquiring the air rights and property needed to build a massive tower on Fifth Avenue, right in the heart of Midtown, on one of the most prestigious streets in the world. This won't be just another building. This will be Trump Tower, a statement in glass and bronze that will mix retail, office, and residential space in a way that creates a complete environment, a destination. The early 1980s are a different time in New York. The city has stepped back from the edge of bankruptcy, though it's still rough around the edges, still struggling with crime and decay in many neighborhoods. But there's new energy too, a sense that maybe the worst is over, that maybe the city can reinvent itself. Wall Street is beginning to boom as financial deregulation creates opportunities for wealth accumulation on a scale not seen in generations. There's money flowing into the city again, and people with that money need places to spend it, places to live, places to see and be seen. Trump Tower is designed to capture this emerging market. The architect is Der Scotti, working with Donald's very specific vision of what luxury should look like. The lobby will be tall, soaring, with pink marble and brass fixtures, with a waterfall cascading down one wall. The retail space will house the most expensive brands, stores that sell products most people can only dream of owning. The apartments above will be finished to the highest specifications, sold to the wealthy who want a Fifth Avenue address and all the status that comes with it. Donald is involved in every decision, every detail. The shade of the marble, the height of the ceilings, the design of the elevator interiors. He has specific ideas about what luxury means, ideas formed partly from his own instincts and partly from careful observation of what wealthy people respond to. He understands that luxury is not just quality, it's theater, it's spectacle, it's the feeling of entering a space that announces you've made it, that you're part of an exclusive club. Construction begins in 1979 and continues through the early 1980s. It's a massive undertaking, complicated by the building's size and location, by the need to keep Fifth Avenue traffic flowing, by the challenges of building high-quality spaces in a city where labor costs are enormous, and every trade union has its own rules and requirements. Donald navigates this maze with a combination of charm and aggression, making friends when friendship helps and making threats when threats work better. He's also building his public persona during these years. He cultivates relationships with gossip columnists and society reporters, understanding that in New York, being talked about is almost as valuable as actual achievement. He's seen at the right restaurants, the right clubs, always with beautiful women, always projecting success. His marriage to Ivana Zelnichkova, a Czech model and athlete he married in 1977, fits perfectly into this image. She's beautiful, elegant, with an accent that sounds vaguely exotic to American ears, and together they become fixtures of New York society. Ivana is more than just a trophy wife, though. She's genuinely involved in the business, particularly in interior design decisions for Trump Tower and later projects. She has strong opinions and isn't afraid to express them, which sometimes creates friction, but also results in better outcomes. Their apartment in Trump Tower, which they move into as the building nears completion, becomes famous for its over-the-top opulence. Gold fixtures, marble everywhere, Louis XIV-style furniture, a living space that looks like a European palace reimagined for late 20th century Manhattan. Trump Tower opens in 1983, and it's immediately a sensation. The retail spaces fill with high-end stores, Asprey, Buccellati, Charles Jourdan. The apartments sell quickly despite astronomical prices, purchased by corporate executives, foreign investors, celebrities. The building becomes a tourist destination, with people coming just to ride the escalators, to see the waterfall, to walk through the lobby and imagine living in such luxury. And at the heart of it all is Donald, with his name in giant bronze letters on the building's exterior, visible from blocks away. The success of Trump Tower validates everything Donald believed about himself, confirms his instinct that Manhattan luxury real estate is where fortunes are made and reputations are built. The profits are substantial, but more important than the money is the brand he's creating. Trump is becoming synonymous with a particular kind of luxury, bold, showy, unapologetically excessive. Not everyone's taste, certainly. Critics complain about the gaudiness, the lack of subtlety, the triumph of flash over substance. But Donald doesn't care about critics. He cares about customers, and customers are lining up. He's also expanding beyond Manhattan. In Atlantic City, New Jersey, casino gambling has recently been legalized, and developers are rushing to build casinos on the boardwalk, hoping to create an East Coast Las Vegas. Donald sees opportunity in the gaming industry, a business where huge amounts of cash flow through every day, where the right location and the right marketing can generate profits that make even successful real estate look modest by comparison. His first Atlantic City project is Harrah's at Trump Plaza, which opens in 1984 as a partnership with the established casino company Harrah's. The building rises on the boardwalk, another tower with Trump's name on it, filled with slot machines and gaming tables and hotel rooms designed to keep gamblers comfortable and spending. Donald learns the casino business, learns about gaming regulations and hold percentages and how to market to different types of gamblers. He discovers he likes this business, likes the scale of the money involved, likes the glamour and excitement that casinos generate. But the partnership with Harrah's is temporary. Donald wants control, wants his casinos to be fully Trump operations, not shared ventures where he has to compromise with partners. In 1985, he buys out Harrah's stake, and the casino becomes Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, fully his. He's also working on a second Atlantic City property, Trump's Castle, which will open later that year. 2 casinos in one city, both carrying his name, both competing for gamblers who come to the boardwalk looking for entertainment and the illusion that maybe, just maybe, they'll beat the odds and go home rich. The mid-1980s are dizzying with activity and success. Trump Tower is profitable beyond projections. The Atlantic City casinos are generating enormous revenue, even if the profit margins are thinner than they initially appeared. He's building Trump Park, a residential tower on Central Park South. He's renovating the Barbizon Hotel. He's acquiring the Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, a massive property built by Marjorie Merriweather Post in the 1920s, with more than 100 rooms and beachfront on both the Atlantic Ocean and Lake Worth. Mar-a-Lago is interesting as a purchase because it's not immediately profitable. It's expensive to maintain, and the initial plan to turn it into a super exclusive club for the ultra-wealthy doesn't quite work. Palm Beach already has exclusive clubs, and competition for old money's membership fees is fierce. But Donald likes owning it anyway, likes having this visible symbol of wealth and status in one of America's richest communities, likes spending winters there, hosting events, being a presence in a place where old money has traditionally looked down on new money, especially new money with Queen's accents and flashy gold fixtures. His children are growing up during these years. Donald Jr. is born in 1977, Ivanka in 1981, Eric in 1984. They live in that enormous Trump Tower apartment, surrounded by marble and gold, attended by staff, living a childhood that's both privileged beyond measure and slightly strange in its isolation from normal life. Donald is often working, usually working, absorbed in deals and negotiations and the constant effort to maintain and expand his empire. Ivana manages much of the day-to-day parenting, but Donald is present enough, teaching his children early about competition, about winning, about the Trump family expectations. The media attention continues to grow. He's featured in magazines constantly, always positioned as the symbol of 1980s excess and ambition. He appears on television shows, gives interviews, cultivates friendships with gossip columnists who write about his latest deals, his parties, his lifestyle. He's becoming famous in a way that goes beyond his actual business achievements, famous simply for being Donald Trump, for representing a certain kind of American success story. In 1987, he publishes The Art of the Deal, a book that's part autobiography, part business advice, part self-promotion. The book is written with Tony Schwartz, a journalist who spends months shadowing Donald, observing how he operates, translating the chaos of his business style into readable prose. The book presents Donald as a master negotiator, a man who wins through preparation, creativity, and willingness to walk away from deals that don't meet his standards. It's a carefully constructed image, not entirely false, but not entirely true either. A portrait of the businessman Donald wants people to see, rather than the full complicated reality. The Art of the Deal becomes a massive bestseller, spending weeks at #1 on the New York Times list. It reaches people far beyond New York, far beyond the real estate industry, bringing the Trump brand to millions of Americans who will never stay in a Trump hotel or gamble in a Trump casino, but who respond to the message that with enough confidence and determination, anyone can achieve extraordinary success. The book makes Donald even more famous, transforms him from a New York real estate developer into a national figure, a symbol of an era. But beneath the success, there are problems developing. The Atlantic City casinos are carrying enormous debt, borrowed money used to build and acquire properties in a city where casino competition is intense and getting more intense. The profit margins that looked good on paper are not quite materializing in reality, squeezed by operating costs and debt service and the simple fact that there are only so many gamblers and they're being spread across an increasing number of casinos. Trump's castle, later renamed Trump Marina, never quite achieves the success of Trump Plaza. The location is slightly less desirable, the property smaller, and in Atlantic City, those differences matter. Gamblers tend to cluster at the most successful casinos, creating a feedback loop where the strong get stronger and the weak struggle. Donald is learning, though he wouldn't phrase it this way, that casinos are a brutally competitive business where debt can turn from leverage to anchor very quickly. He's also pursuing other interests that don't fit neatly into the real estate developer category. In 1988, he purchases the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, one of the city's most historic and prestigious properties. The Plaza is losing money, poorly managed, but it's an icon, and Donald wants to own icons. The purchase price is over $400 million, an enormous sum even for someone with Donald's resources, especially since the hotel will need extensive renovations to bring it up to modern luxury standards. Ivana takes charge of the plaza renovation and management, throwing herself into the project with energy and determination. She's there constantly, overseeing work, making decisions, dealing with the endless complications of renovating a historic building while keeping it operational. The renovation is expensive, more expensive than projected, and the debt load keeps growing. But the plaza is important symbolically. Another trophy property with the Trump name attached, another proof that Donald operates at the highest level of New York real estate. He's also buying things that have nothing to do with real estate. In 1988, he purchases the New Jersey Generals, a team in the struggling United States Football League. The USFL is trying to compete with the NFL, playing its games in spring and summer rather than fall, hoping to capture football fans who can't get enough of the sport. Donald's strategy is to force a merger with the NFL by moving the USFL season to fall, creating direct competition that would force the established league to absorb USFL teams to eliminate the threat. It doesn't work. The USFL's antitrust lawsuit against the NFL technically wins, but is awarded only $1 in damages, a symbolic victory that's actually a total defeat. The league folds in 1986, and Donald's football ownership dream ends before it really begins. It's one of his first high-profile failures, a reminder that his Midas touch has limits, that not every bold strategy succeeds no matter how confident the execution. He also gets involved in the airline business, purchasing the Eastern Air Shuttle in 1989 and renaming it the Trump Shuttle. The shuttle runs flights between New York, Boston, and Washington, serving business travelers who need quick, frequent service between these cities. Donald does what he always does. He puts his name on it and tries to make it luxurious, installing leather seats and gold-plated fixtures in a shuttle service where most passengers just want reliable, cheap flights. The shuttle never becomes particularly profitable, burdened by high operating costs and debt service on the purchase price. These diversifications beyond core real estate are warning signs, though Donald doesn't see them that way at the time. Each purchase, each new venture requires financing, adds to the overall debt load, increases the complexity of managing an empire that's spreading across multiple industries. The cash flow from profitable properties like Trump Tower has to support not just new construction, but also these other ventures, and the margin for error is shrinking even as the empire appears to be expanding. The late 1980s are also when Donald's personal life becomes messier, more public, more complicated. His marriage to Ivana is deteriorating, strained by his constant work, his need for attention and admiration, his relationship with Marla Maples, a younger woman he's been seeing. The affair becomes public in 1990, splashed across tabloid front pages in a way that's humiliating for Ivana and fascinating for a public that's been following the Trump fairy tale. The tabloids love it. Two women fighting over Donald, one wronged wife, and one younger mistress, all playing out in public. The divorce is bitter and very public. Ivana and Donald fight over money, over property, over the custody arrangements for their 3 children. The prenuptial agreement limits what Ivana can claim, but she fights hard, and the proceedings drag on, feeding the tabloids with new details and accusations. Donald's image takes a hit. The confident dealmaker is revealed to be a husband who cheated, a family man whose family is falling apart in the most public way possible. But he doesn't retreat from the spotlight. Instead, he leans into it, continues giving interviews, continues being visible, acting as if public scandal is just another form of publicity. And then the financial problems become impossible to ignore. It's 1990, and the real estate market is softening, the economy sliding into recession. The debt load that seemed manageable when property values were rising and banks were eager to lend is suddenly crushing. The Atlantic City casinos are struggling, unable to generate enough cash to service their debt. The Trump Shuttle is losing money. The Plaza Hotel is costing more than it's bringing in. Banks that were happy to lend money when times were good are now nervous, now asking hard questions about cash flow and debt coverage ratios. Donald is forced into negotiations with his creditors, a position he's never been in before, a position that feels like weakness and failure. The talks are difficult, sometimes hostile, as banks try to protect their interests, and Donald tries to maintain control of his properties and his empire. He's forced to sell things. The Trump shuttle goes back to the creditors. The Trump princess yacht is sold. A plane is sold. Personal spending is restricted by the banks, who insist on limits to stop the bleeding. It's humbling in a way that Donald has never experienced. All through the 1980s, he was ascending, conquering, winning. Now he's struggling, fighting to survive financially, discovering that debt cuts both ways, that leverage can destroy as easily as it builds. The press that was so eager to celebrate his success is equally eager to chronicle his troubles. Articles appear questioning whether he'll survive, whether the Trump empire is built on sand, whether the master dealmaker has finally met his match. But he doesn't go bankrupt personally, doesn't lose everything. Through some combination of negotiation skill, creditor fatigue, and the bank's realization that a collapsed Trump empire won't pay back their loans any better than a struggling Trump empire, he survives. The deals restructure his debt, give him more time to pay, reduce the interest rates, allow him to keep control of most properties in exchange for giving up others and accepting oversight of his spending. The early 1990s are about rebuilding, about slower growth, about learning from the mistakes of the 1980s, even while publicly insisting that there were no mistakes, only temporary setbacks caused by economic conditions beyond his control. The Trump organization continues, smaller than it was at the peak, less dominant, but surviving. And Donald, chastened but not broken, begins thinking about how to come back, how to restore his image, how to prove that the troubles of 1990 were an aberration rather than a revelation. The nights during this period are probably different than they were during the glory years. Less triumph, more worry. Lying awake thinking about debt payments and negotiations and how to generate cash flow and what happens if the next deal doesn't work. The apartment is quieter too, with Ivana gone, the marriage over, the children splitting time between parents. Success had been loud and crowded and full of activity. Survival is lonelier, a more solitary struggle, but even in the difficult times, there's something in Donald that refuses to accept defeat, that keeps pushing forward, that believes, or at least acts as if he believes, that the comeback is inevitable, that the Trump name still means something, that the best is yet to come. Whether that's admirable determination or dangerous delusion probably depends on your perspective, but either way, it's the quality that defines him more than any other. And so, we've reached the end of another history story. I hope this journey through the calm waters of the past has relaxed your mind and prepared you for a peaceful sleep. Thank you for sharing these moments with me as we get lost together in the depths of history. Each video is a story from the dusty pages of the past, and each story is crafted to be a lullaby just for you. If you enjoyed this video and it helped guide you towards sleep, please don't forget to hit that like button to support me. Subscribe to the channel to discover more of history's monotonous yet mesmerizing tales and drift off to sleep each night with a whisper from the past by your side. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll be instantly alerted when new videos are uploaded. Feel free to share in the comments which historical topics you'd like to hear about. Every suggestion you make could inspire the next video. Now gently close your eyes, take a deep breath, and surrender to the night. I wish you peaceful nights, sweet dreams, and a wonderful sleep in the embrace of history. Until we meet again on our next historical journey. Good night.